most spectacular and consequential battle of Alexander the Great's daring military conquest remains shrouded in mystery. In 331 BC, Alexander met Persian Emperor Darius on the plain at Gaugamela. Even though the Greeks were outnumbered and the terrain favored the Persians, Alexander executed a feat of military brilliance, pulling the Persian ranks apart and leading the charge against Darius himself. When Darius fled, so too did his military, and with it went the Persian Empire. The location of the Battle of Gaugamela has long been a subject of debate among Alexander scholars. Politics and war have added to the problem, deterring historians from exploring the plains of northern Iraq in search of answers. I decided to follow up on the research of British historian Michael Wood, who recently traveled to the region with the military in an effort to find the battle site. The trouble with the location Wood pinpointed, though, is that it straddles Iraq's secure Kurdish region and turbulent Nineveh province, whose capital is the battle-torn city of Mosul. Departing Erbil, the capital of Kurdistan, we headed west towards Mosul. Eventually, Kurdish flags became fewer, and the dress of the people on the side of the road turned from Kurdish to Arab. About 8 miles outside of Mosul, we cut north, working our way through checkpoints and bad roads, watching as U.S. helicopters zoomed overhead, to the monastery of Mar Matai, perched high on the side of Mount Maklub, reportedly near Gaugamela. The 1,600-year-old monastery today has turned into something of a refuge for Iraqi Christians, who have become increasingly targeted by militants. When we visited, 15 families from Mosul were living there on a temporary basis. Interestingly, the monastery is one of the few places on earth where people still speak Aramaic. The trouble was that nobody at the monastery had heard of Gaugamela, or the town of Tel Gomel, around which the site is supposedly located. So we continued driving up the mountain, despite warnings from several at the monastery that someone had stepped on a landmine on the mountaintop 3 days earlier. When we finally reached the summit, it didn't take long to spot it. The tremendous plain on which Darius's army of elephants, chariots, and fighters from the east squared off against the streamlined, better-trained forces commanded by Alexander. Darius had set a battlefield perfect for his army, but Alexander's bold decision-making and daring charge dealt a death blow to the Persian Empire. After taking some time to soak in the view and the history, we decided to head back to Erbil. That was until our driver, Haji Sami, came running back to the car, announcing that he had just met a couple of men from the village of Tel Gomel. They had agreed to lead us there. So we followed our guides along country roads, stopping occasionally when they felt like hopping out of the car for a chat. We drove for more than half an hour down increasingly rough roads until we reached Tel Gomel, which was really just a tiny collection of houses. Next to it was a hill. History tells us that Darius commanded the early phase of the battle from atop a hill, and this may well have been the spot, the site of Alexander's most important victory.